For our second Punnett square, we're going to show a cross between two heterozygous parents. This means that each plant in this scenario is heterozygous for the trait of plant height. Okay, we start out the same way. We show our parent cross, which in this case is heterozygous times heterozygous. We also include our key, which shows what the alleles represent. So the dominant allele, capital T, equals tall, plant height. The recessive allele, or the lowercase t, represents short plant height. So we're going to start out with our Punnett square, set it up the same way. One parent, the gametes for one of the parents will go along the top. The gametes for the other parent will go along the side. So in this case, since each parent contains one of each allele in the pair, half of the gametes they produce will contain the dominant allele, and the other half will contain the recessive allele. So if you're looking at plants, let's say this top parent is the male plant. This means that all the pollen that contains the male gametes, or the male, we'll call it plant sperm cells, half of those would contain the dominant allele for tall, and the other half that are produced would contain the recessive allele for short. This happens during the process of meiosis, when the homologous chromosomes separate to create the gametes. Okay, the second parent, as before, we will put it along the side. So this parent will create gametes that either contain the dominant allele, or half of the gametes they produce will contain the recessive allele. Okay, once again, you'll fill out the possible offspring combinations that result when these gametes combine. So if this gamete here combines with this one here, you have two dominant alleles. The next possible combination when these gametes combine is a heterozygous combination. Third possible outcome is another heterozygous combination. And then our fourth box will represent the third possible combination, which is homozygous recessive. Okay, in this case, we have different possible genotype outcomes. So our genotypic ratio will represent these possible outcomes. Okay, of our four different possible combinations, 1 in 4 represents a homozygous dominant individual. 2 in the 4 would be heterozygous. And then there's a 1 out of 4 chance that it would be homozygous recessive. So this means this ratio shows a distribution of the possible outcomes of the offspring. So if you're going to look at percentages, 1/4 or 25% could be homozygous dominant. They have a 50% chance of being heterozygous, and they have a 25% chance of being homozygous recessive. Now the phenotypic ratio, this is the possible ratio of what the physical appearance of the plants would be. So of the phenotypic ratios, remember, if the combination contains the dominant allele, it will be expressed as the dominant trait. So in this case, 3 out of 4 times the offspring will be tall, and 1 out of 4 times it'll be short. So 75% of the time, the plants would end up as tall plants. 25% of the time, they will be short.